The cantina's dim lights flickered across Veltar's scarred carapace as he settled into his chair. His remaining 3 eyes, 2 biological, 1 cybernetic, surveyed the mixed crowd of young aliens who had gathered to hear war stories. They expected tales of glory and conquest. They would leave with something far different. "You want to hear about humans in war?" Veltar's translator crackled with static from old battle damage. "Sit quietly then. What I witnessed during the Terran. Integration conflict changed how every species views warfare." He paused, his clawed hand tracing the edge of his prosthetic arm. "It began in 2157, when Earth petitioned to join the Galactic Defense Coalition. The Purification Alliance, fanatics who believed only pure species deserved to exist, declared humanity an abomination. They gave us an ultimatum: abandon the humans or face extinction." The young Centaurian in the front row leaned forward. His green skin gleamed with curiosity. But humans were so new to space travel. Why did the Alliance fear them? Veltar's cybernetic eye whirred as it focused. Fear? No, young one. They didn't fear humans, they despised them. Humans were different from every species we had encountered. Most races develop space travel after achieving unity. Humans reached the stars while still fighting among themselves. A Zephyrian female with silver wings shifted nervously. "That sounds primitive." "Primitive?" Veltar made a sound that might have been laughter. The Alliance thought so too. They studied human history, saw the wars, the conflicts, the centuries of violence. They believed humans would bring chaos to the galaxy. The old veteran activated a small holoprojector. Images of Earth appeared above the table. Blue oceans, white clouds, green continents. It looked peaceful, almost fragile. The Alliance sent scouts to observe human society. What they found confused them. Yes, humans had wars, but they also had something else, something none of us understood. At first, he manipulated the display. Now it showed human cities bustling with activity. Humans of different colors and sizes working together, laughing together, living together. Humans fight, but they also forgive. They destroy, but they also heal. They hate, but they also love, with an intensity that terrifies other species. The Alliance scouts reported something that made no sense to them. Veltar paused, letting the silence build. The cantina was completely quiet now. Even the bartender had stopped cleaning glasses to listen. They reported that humans would die for strangers, not for their tribe, not for their nation, but for people they had never met. The scouts watched human soldiers risk their lives to save civilians from other countries, other cultures, even their enemies. A young Altarian male with blue fur spoke up. "All species protect their own kind." "Their own kind, yes. But humans?" Veltar shook his head. "They protect everyone." The Alliance found records of humans jumping into frozen rivers to save drowning animals. Humans running into burning buildings to rescue people who were different from them. Humans sharing food with hungry strangers even when they were hungry themselves. The display changed again. Now it showed human soldiers from different nations working together on some kind of mission. The final scout report said something that made the Alliance declare war immediately. It said that humans were becoming more unified, not less. Their wars were getting smaller while their cooperation was getting bigger. The Alliance realized that if humans joined the galactic community, their strange ideas about helping everyone would spread. Veltar's natural eyes dimmed with sadness. The Alliance believed that caring for others made species weak. They had conquered 47 worlds by convincing people that only the strong deserved to survive. Humans threatened that belief just by existing. The Centaurian asked quietly, "What did the coalition decide?" The vote was close. Many species wanted to abandon humanity to save themselves. Others argued that any species worthy of galactic citizenship deserved protection. The debate lasted for weeks. Veltar touched his prosthetic arm again. "I was a young officer then, full of pride in our military might. I voted to accept humanity into the coalition, not because I believed in their worth, but because I thought we were strong enough to defeat the Alliance easily." He made that sound like laughter again, but there was no humor in it. The Alliance gave us 6 standard months to expel humanity from the coalition. When we refused, they declared total war. not just against humans but against every species that would stand with them. The display showed massive warships gathering in space, thousands of them bristling with weapons. I was assigned to the human world of New Sol as a military advisor. I thought I would teach these primitive warriors how to fight a proper galactic war. Instead, they taught me something that still keeps me awake at night. Veltar stood up slowly, his mechanical joints creaking. They taught me that there are things more important than winning, things worth dying for that have nothing to do with victory. He looked around the cantina, at the young faces watching. Him. You want to know what makes humans dangerous in war? It's not their weapons or their tactics. It's that they refuse to abandon anyone, even when abandoning them would be smart. Kepler 442b, the mining colony of New Busan. Veltar's voice carried the weight of memory. 50,000 humans, mostly Korean colonists working the lithium deposits. When the purification fleet arrived, standard protocol called for evacuation. The humans, they had other plans. He activated a holo display showing the battle. Captain Kim Tae-ho commanded the Colonial Defense Force. 300 Marines against 15,000 purification soldiers. Military doctrine said they should retreat after losing 30% of their forces. The display showed human soldiers in desperate combat. At 60% casualties, Kim's forces were surrounded in the mining complex. That's when I learned something about humans that still haunts me. Veltar's cybernetic eye focused on a young listener. Instead of surrendering, Corporal Park Min-soo volunteered to carry a fusion reactor into the enemy command center. I was monitoring communications when Kim asked for volunteers. Every surviving Marine stepped forward. The old veteran paused, his clawed fingers trembling slightly as he adjusted the display. The hologram showed the mining complex in detail now. Deep tunnels carved into red rock, massive machines sitting silent, and small human figures moving between them like ants. I was stationed on the Coalition command ship above the planet. My job was to advise the human forces on proper military tactics. When I saw their situation, I immediately sent a message to Captain Kim. Retreat immediately, save your remaining forces, fight another day. A young Zephyrian with silver wings asked, "What did he say?" Veltar's translator crackled with static before responding. He said, "Sir, there are 50,000 people behind us. We cannot retreat through them." I told him to evacuate the civilians first, then withdraw. Standard procedure. The display zoomed in on the human captain's face. Kim Tae-ho looked tired but determined. His uniform was torn and dirty from battle. Kim looked directly at me through the communication screen. He said, "Advisor Veltar, evacuation will take 48 hours. The enemy will reach the civilian shelters in 6 hours. We stay here." The Centaurian in the front row shifted uncomfortably. "But that's suicide. 300 against 15,000? Exactly what I told him. Veltar manipulated the display to show the purification forces advancing. Massive creatures in powered armor, moving steadily toward the human positions. I explained that losing 300 soldiers to delay the enemy by a few hours was tactically worthless. Better to save the trained fighters and recruit more later. The old veteran's natural eyes dimmed. Captain Kim was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something I will never forget. He said, "Sir, we are not just soldiers. We are also sons and daughters, fathers and mothers. These people are our families. We do not abandon family." Veltar stood up slowly and walked to the cantina's small window. Outside, the space station's lights twinkled like stars. I watched the battle from orbit. The humans had no heavy weapons, no air support, no reinforcements coming. They used mining equipment as weapons. Explosive charges meant for breaking rock became bombs. Drilling machines became assault vehicles. He turned back to his audience. The purification forces expected a normal military engagement. Advance, overwhelm, accept surrender. Instead, they found humans who fought like cornered animals protecting their young. The display showed the mining tunnels filled with smoke and fire. Human soldiers moved through the darkness, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. Corporal Park Min-soo was a young man, maybe 25 years old. He had a wife and a baby daughter in the civilian shelters. When Captain Kim realized they could not hold the main entrance much longer, He asked for volunteers for a suicide mission. Veltar's voice became very quiet. Park was not the first to volunteer. He was not the strongest or the fastest, but he was the only one small enough to carry the fusion reactor through the ventilation system to the enemy command center, the Eye. Hologram showed a young human soldier with a serious face. Park Min-soo looked like someone's son, someone's husband, not a warrior, just a person trying to protect his family. I was monitoring all communication channels. I heard Park talking to his wife before the mission. He told her he loved her. He told her to name their daughter after his mother. He told her he was sorry he would not see the baby grow up. An Altarian female with blue fur wiped her eyes. What happened? Park carried a fusion reactor through 2 kilometers of air ducts. The reactor weighed more than he did. It took him 3 hours to reach the enemy position. 3 hours of crawling through metal tubes, knowing he would die at the end. Veltar activated another part of the display. It showed the Purification Command Center, a massive structure built on the planet's surface. When Park reached the command center, he sent one final message. He said, "Tell my daughter her father kept his promise. Tell her the people are safe." Then he activated the reactor. The display showed a bright flash of light. When it faded, the command center was gone. The explosion destroyed the enemy command structure and killed 3,000 purification soldiers. But more importantly, it gave the evacuation ships time to reach the colony. All 50,000 civilians escaped safely. Veltar returned to his chair, his mechanical joints creaking. That was my first lesson about human warfare. They do not fight to win. They fight to save others, even when saving others means dying themselves. The cantina was completely silent. Even the bartender had stopped working to listen. The Purification Alliance called it madness. They could not understand why anyone would die for strangers. But I understood something that day. I understood why humans terrify other species. They love people more than they love their own lives. The Battle of Titan Station taught us that humans don't think like us, Veltar continued. Standard military. Doctrine accepts calculated losses. Humans, they calculated differently. The holodisplay shifted to show a massive space station under siege. Lieutenant Lee Soo-jin commanded a rescue operation for a single captured pilot, Private Choi Hee-won. Every tactical analysis said the mission would fail. Coalition command refused support. Veltar's natural eyes dimmed with memory. Lee took 12 volunteers. They were told they were throwing their lives away for one person. Their response? Then one person is worth 12 lives. They didn't just extract Choi. They brought back 300 prisoners of war we didn't know existed. He flexed his prosthetic fingers. I lost this arm diving after Lee when she was treating wounded purification soldiers during the extraction. She said something that changed me. Pain doesn't choose sides. I watched her give her own medical supplies to the enemy wounded. The old veteran adjusted the holographic display to show Titan Station in detail. The massive structure spun slowly in space, its metal hull scarred by weapon fire. Sections of the station were dark, their lights destroyed by the ongoing battle. Titan Station was our main supply depot in the outer rim. When the Purification Alliance captured it, we lost access to food, medicine, and ammunition for 12 coalition worlds. The station also held 3,000 prisoners from various species. A young Altarian male leaned forward. Why didn't the coalition send a full assault force to retake it? Veltar made that sound like bitter laughter again. Politics. The coalition council decided that saving Titan Station would cost too many lives. They voted to write it off as a loss and build new supply lines elsewhere. The display zoomed in on a small section of the station. But Private Choi Hee-won was still alive inside. Her fighter had been shot down during the initial battle. Intelligence. Reports confirmed she was being held in the station's detention center. The Centaurian in the front row asked, "Just one person, out of 3,000 prisoners." That's exactly what Coalition Command said. Veltar's cybernetic eye whirred as it focused, but Lieutenant Lee Soo-jin saw it differently. She said that if they abandoned one person because the rescue was difficult, they would abandon anyone when it became convenient. The hologram showed a young human woman in a military uniform. Lee Soo-jin had short black hair and determined eyes. She looked like someone who had never backed down from anything in her life. I was assigned as Lee's tactical advisor. My job was to explain why her rescue mission was impossible. The station had 50,000 purification soldiers. Lee had 12 volunteers in a stolen transport ship. Veltar stood up and walked around the table, his prosthetic arm clicking softly with each step. I showed her the tactical analysis. The station's defenses were too strong. The prisoner detention center was too well guarded. Even if they reached Choi, they would never escape alive. A Zephyrian female with silver wings asked, "What did she say?" She looked at me with those human eyes and said, "Advisor Veltar, we are not trying to survive this mission. We are trying to bring Choi home." I told her that was the same thing. She said, "No, sir, it is not." The display showed the inside of a small transport ship. 13 humans in combat gear checking their weapons and equipment. They all looked young, too young to be planning a suicide mission. Lee's volunteers were from different human worlds, different cultures. Some were Korean like her, others were from Earth, Mars, the Europa colonies. They had never served together before, but they all shared one thing. Veltar paused, looking at each face in his audience. They all believed that no person should be left behind, no matter what the cost. The hologram shifted to show the rescue mission beginning. The small transport ship approached Titan Station, trying to look like a supply vessel. The plan was simple and insane. Dock at a maintenance port, fight through 50 levels of the station, reach the detention center, extract Choi, and escape. I calculated their chances of success at less than 1%. The old veteran sat back down, his mechanical joints creaking. What I didn't calculate was human stubbornness. When the purification guards challenged their ship, Lee told them they were delivering medical supplies. When the guards demanded proof, she actually gave them medical supplies. A young listener asked, "She brought real medical supplies to a rescue mission? Enough to treat 100 wounded soldiers." Lee said they might find injured prisoners who needed help. I thought she was wasting cargo space. I was wrong. The display showed the humans moving through the station's corridors. They moved carefully, avoiding patrols, heading toward the detention center. They reached the prison level after 6 hours, but when they found Choi, they also found something else. The detention center held 300 prisoners from a dozen different species. Coalition soldiers, civilian contractors, even some purification deserters who had been imprisoned for refusing orders. Veltar's natural eyes focused on the Altarian in the audience. Lee faced a choice: take Choi and run, or try to save everyone. Her mission was to rescue one person, but she looked at those 300 faces and said, "We take them all." The hologram showed the massive prison break. Humans and aliens working together to disable security systems and overwhelm guards. That's when I lost my arm. During the escape, Lee stopped to treat wounded purification soldiers who had been injured in the fighting. I thought she was crazy. These were the enemy, the people trying to kill us. Veltar flexed his prosthetic fingers again, but Lee knelt beside a dying purification warrior and began treating his wounds with her own medical supplies. When I asked why, she said, "Pain doesn't choose sides." The warrior looked at her with such confusion. No one had ever shown him kindness. The old veteran's voice became very quiet. A purification sniper shot at Lee while she was helping the wounded. I threw myself in front of the energy blast. The beam took my arm, but Lee survived. He looked around the cantina at the young faces listening to his story. 3 of those wounded purification soldiers helped us escape. They carried me to the transport while Lee finished treating their comrades. They said they had never seen anything like human mercy. The display showed the transport ship leaving Titan Station with all 301 prisoners aboard. That mission changed everything, not just because we saved those people, but because word spread throughout the galaxy. Humans would risk everything to save anyone, even their enemies. The most terrifying human weapon wasn't their plasma rifles or fusion bombs, Veltar said quietly. It was their medics. The display showed a field hospital. Commander Yoon Da-hee established the Seoul Protocol, mandatory medical treatment for all wounded, regardless of species or allegiance. Purification soldiers who came to kill her were treated by her own hands. A Altarian listener scoffed. That's weakness, not warfare. Veltar's cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on the speaker. Is it? 3 purification commanders defected after being treated by human medics. Entire fleets surrendered when they learned humans would feed them, heal them, and treat them as people. I watched Sergeant Kang Boram risk her life to evacuate a purification nursery during the siege of Proxima. When asked why she would save enemy children, she said, "Because they're children." 47 enemy soldiers laid down their weapons that day. The old veteran manipulated the holographic display to show a large medical tent surrounded by smaller structures. Human medics in white coats moved between beds filled with wounded soldiers from different species. Commander Yoon Da-hee was a doctor before she became a soldier. When the war started, she volunteered for combat duty. The coalition assigned her to lead medical operations on the front lines. A young Centaurian raised her hand. Why would a doctor want to fight in a war? Veltar's translator crackled softly. She didn't want to fight. She wanted to heal, but she knew that in war, the people who need healing most are often the ones closest to the fighting. The display zoomed in on a human woman with gentle eyes and steady hands. Commander Yoon Da-hee looked tired but determined as she worked on a wounded alien soldier. The sole protocol was Yoon's idea. She said that medical care should not depend on which side someone fought for. If they were hurt, they deserved treatment. The coalition command thought she was naive. Veltar walked to the bar and ordered another drink. His prosthetic arm moved smoothly as he lifted the glass. I was stationed at Forward Base Echo when Yoon arrived with her medical team. The base was under constant attack. We had wounded soldiers coming in every day, both coalition and purification forces. The hologram showed the chaos of a battlefield medical station. Explosions in the distance, wounded soldiers being carried on stretchers, medics running between patients. The first time purification prisoners were brought to Yoon's hospital, I expected her to treat coalition soldiers first. That would be normal. Instead, she examined every patient and treated the most seriously wounded first, regardless of their species or allegiance. A Zephyrian with silver wings looked confused. She treated enemies before her own people. She treated patients based on medical need, not politics. Veltar took a sip of his drink. I watched her spend 6 hours operating on a purification commander who had tried to destroy our base the day before. When I asked why, she said, "He is dying. Nothing else matters right now." The display showed Yoon working in an operating theater, her hands steady as she repaired damaged organs in an alien body. Word spread quickly through the purification ranks. Human medics would treat anyone who needed help. At first, their commanders forbade soldiers from seeking human medical care. They said it was a trap. The old veteran returned to his chair, his expression thoughtful. But wounded soldiers don't care about politics. They care about survival. Purification troops began surrendering just to reach human hospitals. The hologram shifted to show purification soldiers approaching human positions with their weapons raised in surrender, many of them injured. The breakthrough came during the Battle of Kepler Prime. A purification assault team attacked Yoon's hospital directly. They were under orders to kill all the human medics and destroy the medical supplies. Veltar's cybernetic eye focused on a young Altarian. But when they entered the hospital, they found something unexpected. Commander Yoon was treating wounded purification soldiers alongside coalition troops. She looked up at the assault team and said, "Please wait. I'm almost finished with this surgery." The audience leaned forward, captivated by the story. The assault team leader was a veteran warrior named Krixtal. He had fought humans for 2 years and believed they were savage creatures who showed no mercy. But he watched Yoon save the life of a purification soldier who had been left for dead by his own commanders. The display showed the tense scene inside the hospital, armed purification soldiers standing among beds of wounded troops while human medics continued their work. Krixtal ordered his team to wait until the surgery was complete. Then he asked Yoon why she would save an enemy's life. She said, "Because I am a doctor. My job is to heal people, not to judge them." Veltar's voice became very quiet. Krixtal had been wounded in previous battles. His own commanders had refused to waste medical supplies on someone who might not survive. But this human stranger had just spent hours saving one of his soldiers. The hologram showed the purification commander removing his helmet and setting down his weapon. Krixtal became the first high-ranking purification officer to defect. He brought intelligence about enemy positions and plans, but more importantly, he brought a message that spread through the purification fleet. A young listener asked, "What message?" That humans fight differently. They don't just defeat enemies. They turn enemies into friends by showing them kindness when they expect cruelty. The display showed more scenes from human medical stations. Alien soldiers of all species working together, former enemies helping each other recover from wounds. Sergeant Kang Bo Ram was another example. During the siege of Proxima, she discovered a purification nursery in a building that was about to collapse. The nursery held 60 young aliens, children of purification soldiers. Veltar stood up again, his mechanical joints clicking. Military. Doctrine said to let the building collapse. The children were enemy dependents, not coalition civilians. But Kang looked at those scared little faces and saw only children who needed help. The hologram showed a human soldier carrying alien children to safety, while explosions shook the building around them. Kang made 17 trips into that collapsing structure. She saved all 60 children, plus the civilian caretakers who refused to abandon them. When purification soldiers arrived and saw their children safe in human care, they stopped fighting. The old veteran's natural eyes dimmed with emotion. 47 purification soldiers laid down their weapons that day. They said they could not fight people who would risk their lives to save enemy children. He looked around the cantina, at the young faces listening to his story. That's when I understood the true power of human warfare. They don't just defeat armies, they defeat the idea that enemies must remain enemies forever. Veltar stood slowly, his prosthetics whirring softly. The war ended not with human victory, but with purification's surrender. Not because they were defeated, but because they could no longer justify fighting people who would die to save them. He reached into his jacket and produced 2 insignias, his Coalition Service Medal and something else. The most chilling thing about human warfare isn't their courage or their tactics, it's that they refuse to see anyone as truly alien. They weaponized empathy. The second insignia caught the light, Korean characters spelling out Seoul Defense Corps, with honorary citizen beneath. I stayed on Earth after the war, learned their language, their customs, became what they call a naturalized citizen. I came here tonight not to warn you about humans, but to explain why I chose to become one. The old veteran held both medals in his prosthetic palm, the metal catching the cantina's dim lights. His cybernetic eye focused on the Korean characters, while his natural eyes looked at his audience. The final battle never happened. That's what most people don't understand about the end of the war. There was no great space battle, no climactic victory. The Purification Alliance simply stopped fighting. A young Centaurian leaned forward. How can an entire military alliance just stop? Veltar's translator crackled softly as he replied, "When your soldiers refuse to fight, you have no army. When your commanders defect to the enemy, you have no leadership. When your people question everything they believed about war, you have no cause." The holographic display showed the final days of the conflict. Purification fleets floating peacefully near coalition forces, their weapons powered down. It started with small surrenders, a patrol here, an outpost there. Purification soldiers who had been treated by human medics began laying down their weapons. They told their comrades about human kindness, human mercy, human refusal to abandon anyone. The display shifted to show massive purification battleships, broadcasting surrender messages across multiple star systems. Admiral Zekmor was the highest-ranking purification officer to defect. He commanded 300 warships and 50,000 troops. When he switched sides, he brought detailed intelligence about every purification base and battle plan. A Zephyrian with silver wings asked, why did such a powerful leader surrender? His daughter was injured in a mining accident on a contested world. Purification military doctors said her wounds were too severe to waste resources on. But a human medical team risked their lives to reach her and perform surgery that saved her life. Veltar's natural eyes dimmed with memory. Zekmor asked the human surgeon why she would help an enemy child. The surgeon said, "She's not an enemy. She's a little girl who needs help." That conversation ended the war. The hologram showed the historic moment when Zekmor met with coalition leaders to discuss terms of surrender. But the real end came when ordinary purification citizens began questioning their leaders. They had been told that other species were dangerous, that only pure-blooded aliens deserved to exist. Then they saw humans dying to save purification. Children. The old veteran walked around the table, his prosthetic leg clicking softly with each step. The purification government tried to maintain control by claiming human kindness was a trick, a way to make their enemies weak. But you cannot explain away someone giving their life for your child. You cannot dismiss mercy when you have experienced it yourself. The display showed purification worlds celebrating peace, their populations welcoming former enemies as friends. The war ended with a simple message broadcast across every purification communication network. It said, "We were wrong. Humans are not our enemies, they are our teachers." Signed by every surviving purification leader. Veltar returned to his chair and carefully placed both insignias on the table. The coalition medal looked official and formal. The Korean insignia looked more personal, more meaningful. I was assigned to the post-war reconstruction effort. My job was to help integrate former purification worlds into the coalition. I expected it to be difficult, full of anger and resentment. A young Altarian asked, "Was it?" The opposite. Former purification citizens wanted to learn everything about human culture. They studied human languages, human customs, human philosophy. They wanted to understand how a species could be so strong, yet so gentle. The hologram showed scenes of peaceful cooperation. Humans and former enemies working together to rebuild damaged worlds. I spent 2 years on Earth as part of the integration program. I lived in Seoul, the city that gave its name to the medical protocol that changed everything. I learned to speak Korean. I studied human history, human art, human literature. Veltar's cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on his Korean insignia. What I discovered amazed me. Humans had always been this way. Their history was full of stories about people sacrificing themselves for strangers, about enemies becoming friends, about mercy conquering hatred. The old veteran picked up his coalition medal and held it toward the light. This medal represents my service to the coalition. 40 years of military duty, dozens of battles, hundreds of tactical victories. I was proud of this medal. Then he picked up the Korean insignia. But this represents something more important. It represents the day I stopped being just a soldier and became a person who cares about others. The audience sat in complete silence, captivated by his words. The ceremony was simple. The mayor of Seoul presented citizenship papers to 50 former coalition military personnel who had chosen to stay on Earth. When he handed me this insignia, he said something in Korean that I will never forget. Veltar's translator struggled with the emotion in his voice. He said, "Welcome home, brother. Not welcome to Earth, welcome home, as if I had always belonged there, as if I had just been away for a while." The hologram showed the citizenship ceremony, humans and aliens standing, together celebrating new friendships. I came here tonight because young people like you need to understand what humans really are. They are not perfect. They make mistakes. They have conflicts. They sometimes fail to live up to their own ideals. The old veteran stood up one final time, gathering his insignias. But they never stopped trying to be better. They never stopped believing that former enemies can become friends. They never stopped caring about people they have never met. He looked around the cantina, at the young faces watching him. That's why I became human. Not because I changed my species, but because I learned to see the universe the way they do, full of people who deserve kindness, regardless of what they look like or where they come from. Veltar moved toward the exit, his mechanical joints clicking softly. The most dangerous thing about humans isn't their weapons or their tactics. It's their absolute refusal to give up on anyone. They will keep trying to save you, even when you're trying to kill them. He paused at the door and looked back, and eventually that kindness becomes impossible to resist. The cantina door closed behind him, leaving only silence and the weight of truth.